Why, good morning again. It's 5:40 in the morning. It's April 27th, 2021. As you see here, I'm watching one of my favorite shows, Viva Frei and Barnes. I like them both. They're definitely a dichotomy of roots. One's Canadian, one's American, but they make a good duo, deadly duo, dandy duo. How about a dandy duo? Viva Frei is very. He's modest. He's very thoughtful, and so I think I at least owe him a little bit of a tone down of my radical speech while using him in one of my videos. What they're talking about here is Black Lives Matter. And this got me thinking, because I'm a thinker, about a problem that's I've been thinking about for a long time.
In the lawsuits. I believe in, I believe in social justice. I just don't believe in BLM tactics, which often involve violent riots and their self-proclaimed destruction of the nuclear family, which, goes against their views. What I find totally shocking in the lawsuit is the allegations of what goes on in the soccer teams. Like they discuss and sit there to say how they're going to promote social justice and require the players to wear, they were discussing a BLM armband or a BLM logo on their shirts, or to take the names on their shirts of victims of alleged police brutality, something along those lines. When you read about what's going on campus, just to read about it alone, setting aside what happens in this lawsuit, is eye-opening and shocking enough to people who don't already know that it's going on. But on a lawsuit basis,
I went the wrong way.
Team that she quit, and the question will be whether the harassing atmosphere is, in my view, a poor decision. But even if you're going to do so, and by the way, this is at the same time the International Olympics Committee considers it so offensive to sport to inject politics into it that they are banning people from taking the knee during the Olympics. They're like, or raising the fist. They're like, none of this. They're like, save your politics for politics, save sports for sports, and save sports from politics. And this is just an extreme example of it. But the fact that you have, Virginia Tech, Locust is under indictment for doing a bunch of.
Her explanation was
bogus cases. They don't want the Ben Crump, not in a group she agrees with, because they believe in things like destroying the nuclear family, and a lot of people have problems with that. How bad it is. And this is just an extreme example of it. But the fact that you have, Virginia Tech, located in a part of the state that's actually quite conservative, not the campus itself, gives you an idea of how bad it is. That a female soccer player who just doesn't want to use her sport to propagandize a political message she doesn't support or doesn't want to be a part of. She doesn't want to be. Her position was Black Lives Matter, but the group BLM is not in a group she agrees with because they believe in things like destroying the nuclear family, and a lot of people have problems with that. They're a bunch of grifters, BLM, a bunch of grifters. They never show up in any major case I've been involved with. I've had real cases of abuse, often racially tinged abuse, and BLM's nowhere to be found. They only want the bogus cases. They only want the Ben Crump race grifting, race baiting cases, so they can lie to the world about the situation and cause more division, because that's their goal. Their goal is revolution. They say so overtly. Now, in the interim, they'd like to have 5 houses, if you wouldn't mind helping them out.
Her explanation was those were for her family. That was her family money. There's nothing wrong with having money. She considers it to be her family money.
Nobody can account for a lot of the money. I mean, one of them just is under indictment for doing a bunch of funny stuff with the money. Most of the money has not flowed down to the community at large. It's just kind of vanished. And so there's a lot of questions about BLM. BLM, not in a group she agrees, not in a group she.
Okay. It's a long way to get there, but a short time we have. I've often, so this concerns unions. This can concern Black Lives Matter. This can concern political PACs. It's something I've been thinking about for a very long time. It could be the PTA, Parent Teachers Association. And I'm not saying anything's corrupt here. I'm just saying when a group is formed, a nonprofit, nonprofits have gone corrupt, and the fact that people think, oh, it's a nonprofit. God, there's so many levels to this. I'll try to stay on it. Okay, so you form a nonprofit for a certain cause, or you make a group, whether it's the post office, whatever the goal is of the group. Usually groups are made to suffice a need, to take care of a problem. Okay. What happens is, as that group grows and the internal parts become more convoluted, more detached from each other, and it rises in needing resources to sustain itself, the focus almost always starts to become on survival, not the original problem it was trying to solve. Okay, and this becomes problematic because you're taking an organization will become biological, metaphysically, even though none of the members of that group intentionally want to harm or do anything but help the people they claim to help. As a organism, the organism itself starts to strive for its own survival. But it's not an organism. It's a conglomerate of humans. And therefore, what do we do with these large, powerful groups that as an organism, not as individuals, as an organism, tends to try to figure out how to survive, regardless of whether the need it was originally created for is still a valid need. Things like war on poverty. Things like these things turn into something grotesque because even at the outset, when it was about helping people out of poverty, creating gateways, education, trade schools, whatever, it suddenly becomes something unrecognizable from the original business model or paradigm. Okay. When it comes to helping the homeless and the needy, there's a certain type of nonprofit which for millennia has been very astute and very capable, although not perfect and not always the best at helping the homeless or the needy or the disenfranchised or refugees, and that is religion and churches. Now, of course, there's exceptions to the rule. The Catholic Church, the Crusades, and there's always an exception to the rule, but generally, churches have been able to not become so corrupted. Yeah, the guy down in New Orleans, whatever. There's always an exception to the rule, but in general, your local churches, your local dioceses, they generally do a better job at providing the proper resources to the proper people. And we can get into that. There's some, but the idea I'm trying to purvey here is the reasons they're so good at not becoming as corrupt as quickly as non-religious or let me just get to it. A church, a religion, has goals and a purpose that is outside of just feeding the poor and helping out. Therefore, this shields any branch down below of overtaking and encompassing and becoming too powerful and too bloated and too corrupted. Since you have a bigger established principle with different goals, higher goals, bigger goals, and charitable programs or groups inside of that. If you haven't been to, I've been to a few churches. I was involved with one for about 2.5 years, very, very intimately. You have men's meetings, right? You have women's groups. You have, the choir. You have the band. You have 4-H. Inside our small church, you had many different groups of people following with programs that weren't built solely on saving the soul. But, in essence, it's all about living right and principles and being there in community. But because the overall church goals and paradigms were structured, and then these groups were inside the church, they couldn't expand out past the church. And I think that's what nonprofits and many governmental agencies are lacking, and which is causing a corporation a corporation generally has a business model of profits. See, this is what, I'm not trying to say greed is good, but I'm trying to say greed is predictable. All right? Profits have a certain principle necessary in order to maintain profits, which is predictable, if not fair, if not nice. But at the very least, a private business has to practice certain principles throughout its whole tree of smaller businesses in order to survive. So therefore, that paradigm always takes precedence over any lower paradigms. So when you have a group that's not principled in anything but a single cause, Toys for Tots, Coats for Kids, whatever, what happens when your goals are met and the need no longer exists? Well, now those groups, because they're not based in anything, will try to find something else to substantiate their existence so that they can continue going as a group. Where technically, if the mission's accomplished, no single goal organization I've ever seen has a exit strategy for what do we do when we solve homelessness. Well, they don't plan on solving homelessness. That's a problem, right? But what if they did? What are you going to do with all these social workers and outreach programs and all these things to help the homeless and things like that when we solve that problem and it no longer is a problem? Where do all these jobs go? It's a problem. And like I said, these nonprofits would be better served, and the people in them and the ones they're trying to serve would be better served when they're in a larger paradigm that helps them not have to. So if I'm in a church group, and let's say we're all about something off the top of my head. Let's say we're all about. Let's say we live in a smaller town. We're all about making sure everybody gets lunch at school every day. And let's say the PTA or the school isn't really working with us because we don't like their menu. So we want to make sure healthy, good Christian lunches are available to every child in our school district, right? And it's smaller, so that and the school isn't really. So we start a program where parents can voluntarily sign up and get our lunches, sack lunches that our good Christian friends make every day because they're retired or whatever, and they put the work in and they're more than happy to do it. And so we're doing it for free and donations and things of this nature from the bigger church. Well, 2 years later, the school sees that program working. No one's eating their food because It sucks. And so the school changes its program to meet the same standards that our good Christian friends were handing out. Problem solved. Well, in that paradigm, those church members, because they're part of the church, don't have to worry about what am I going to do now, because for 2 years, I've been spending most of my days making sure our youth are well fed in the right manner, right? What do? Well, because they're part of a church, it's like, oh, well, let's see, I'm part of a church, and we're charitable, so maybe we find something else within our paradigm, because we have the church to still provide for us as a smaller group. We can go back into church, maybe take a break, and then figure out what other direction. There's no pressure to find some cause to so we can justify our existence as a single group. I think it's worth being said. It's a way people need to think about when starting a nonprofit, just so that you don't become the thing you hate, which happens more often than not. All right, that's episode 2 for today. Again, resist COVID thinking, cancel culture, and don't defund the police. Reform the unions. We'll talk about that another time.